How do I complete a POW? A POW stands for Paragraph of the Week. Sometimes this is an assignment we will do in school, and sometimes this is an assignment that will be homework. This video will show you how to read your prompt and how to set up your homework. Here is an example of what a POW might look like. Each POW has a different theme, a different prompt, but the format will be the same, such as the steps that you need to take and the grading rubric. This week our prompt is invent a creature. Pretend you can invent a new animal. What will you call it? Where does it live? What does it eat? What does it sound like? Give it an appropriate name. Describe this animal so well that your readers can actually visualize it in his or her mind. Be creative and be descriptive. There are steps that we are going to take here. Alright, so the step 1, watch the video and take notes. That video happens to be the one that you are listening to right now. Throughout this video, I will have you stop and take notes, or we'll have a section that specifically says notes. So you do not need to write down anything until I say so. Alright, so I'll let you read the steps on your own, but we're going to walk you through those steps right now. The first thing you need to do is create a description web. Alright, so anytime you have a prompt, you first read what the prompt says and then create a description web. Now our prompt again was, pretend you can invent a new animal. What will you call it? Where does it live? What does it eat? And what does it sound like? Give it an appropriate name and describe. Alright, so first you need to decide what kind of pretend animal will you have. You start by creating a circle in the middle here and typing what you would want writing on your paper what the name of your animal might be. My animal that I came up with is called a fairy tiger squirrel. Alright, so I'm going to put that inside my circle on my web. Now, based on the prompt, I have to do a couple of different things. I need to figure out what is my fairy tiger squirrel going to look like. What does it eat? Where does it live? And what does it sound like? Alright, so what you do is you have these different categories here. I'm going to circle them as well. And then you are going to attach them to your middle circle. So all of these are details or areas that we are going to describe our fairy tiger squirrel in. Looks, what do they eat? What does it sound like? Where does it live? If I go back to my prompt, I can see, what do I call it? If it came up with its name, I'm going to decide where it lives, what it will eat, and what does it sound like. So these are some of the things I'm using to describe my fairy tiger squirrel. Here is an example of the description web that I made for my pretend creature. So here's my fairy tiger squirrel. I decided that for the looks that it has tiger stripes, which helps me with my name here, and that the tiger stripes are going to be purple and green. I also decided that my fairy tiger squirrel was going to have a black tail. My fairy tiger squirrel also has wings, because it's a fairy tiger squirrel, and the wings are going to be yellow with some pink. What does my fairy tiger squirrel eat? Berries and fruits. Where does my fairy tiger squirrel live? Lives in tall pine trees, mountains in Idaho, and lives with lots of other squirrels. And finally, my fairy tiger squirrel, what it sounds like is it will speak or chatter in a musical melody. So this is an example of how to make a description web for the first part of your POW. Boys and girls, go ahead and pause the video and copy down the description web that I have made here into your notes so that you have an example of how to create your own description web when it comes time for you to do your own assignment. Go ahead and pause now, and when you are ready, continue playing the video. A few more things that you do need to write down in your notes is on this page. Go ahead and pause it after I've finished talking about this page and write down this information as well. Every paper or POW needs to have the following: an introduction, a middle, and an ending. Write that down and then continue on when you are ready. Here's an example of my POW that I wrote to go with my fairy tiger squirrel. Now notice I have a couple of different things here. I have my title, my name, and a couple of paragraphs describing my fairy tiger squirrel. You do not need to write this down, but I would like you to pause the video, read the story, and then push play when you have finished reading. Go ahead and pause now. Now, like I said before, every paper needs an introduction, a middle, and an ending. In my story here, my introduction is my first paragraph here, where I introduce what I am talking about. My topic sentence is my first sentence here that tells me what my story is going to be about. The fairy tiger squirrel is said to be a myth, but I know it to be true. So this is my first sentence. It tells me what the whole story is going to be about. Now I said where I saw it and introduce it just a little bit. This is my introduction. The next part of my story here is the middle part. So again, here was my introduction. My middle part of my story are these two paragraphs right here. Here is where I'm describing what my fairy tiger squirrel looks like and what it eats. Notice I answered all the questions that you saw in the prompt on the first page. Let's go back and look at that here. So I need to know what I called it. Where does it live? What does it eat? What does it sound like? Now those are the main categories that I wrote here on my description web. I take those details and I write them into my story here. So notice this whole first paragraph up here tells me what my fairy tiger squirrel looks like. And what does it eat, and where does it live, and what does it sound like in this paragraph. So this is the middle section of my story or my writing prompt. This last part here is my closing or my ending. Okay. And here's where I finish up my story. All in all, I was filled with awe at the sight of such a marvelous creature. And I just kind of end up my story a little bit here. You never want to end with just the middle. That kind of leaves the reader hanging. So you need to come up with a couple of sentences at the end to kind of sum up what you saw and maybe point people into the direction to look into more information on the fairy tiger squirrel sighting. Now, even though my topic sentence here says that I know it to be true, this is a fiction story because everything I've created is an invented story. So it's not really true, but that's part of the story. A couple more notes for you to take. There's some important information that you need to remember to write in your own paper. You need a title. You need to use indents in your paragraphs, which are 2-finger spaces. You need to make sure you have a topic sentence. Remember, the topic sentence tells what your paragraph is about. And 4, a concluding sentence, which finishes up your paragraph. I'm going to go back and show you where these are in mine. I'll come back to the screen and then you can pause and take your notes on this. So notice my title is up here. Now an indent is this little space, my little space that you have on the beginning of, let me erase that note here. There we go. It's this beginning space right here of the first sentence in a paragraph. This is an indent. On your final draft, you need to have that be 2 spaces long. Notice when you write indents, you do not actually write the arrows. I just drew in the arrows here to point you to the direction and to the spot that you would need to use an indent right here. Alright, another thing that you need, so you have your title right here, the author, of course, by your name, and indents. Another thing that you need to remember is your topic sentence and concluding sentence. My topic sentence here, you need to make sure that it's a good sentence that introduces your whole story. Now your concluding sentence is the very last sentence and it needs to have some sort of fun ending to your story. So my concluding sentence was, I hope that one day soon, more information will be available about this magnificent creature. So you need to end your story with a concluding sentence. Alright, go ahead and pause, write down this in your notes so that when you are creating your own, you will remember this important information. Go ahead and play when you are ready to move on. The next thing that you need to do for this particular POW prompt is actually draw out what your creature would look like. So here's what my creature would look like. This is my fairy tiger squirrel. Notice it matches exactly what I wrote in my story. It has purple and green stripes. The tail is bushy black, and the wings look like a sunny day, so that means they're yellow, and they have pink highlights in them. Also, my little squirrel here has a berry in its paws because that's the type of food it eats. Make sure that your picture that you draw matches what you wrote exactly. After you have finished your picture, your final draft will look something like this. You will have your title, the author's name, you will have paragraphs of information with indents, you will have your beginning, middle, and ending, and a wonderful picture introducing and showing what your creature that you invented looks like. This is how to specifically make the POW for Invent a Creature, but you would follow the same kinds of steps for any POW. You need to do description webs, rough drafts, and final drafts. Go ahead and reread the directions on your prompt and go ahead and get started. Good luck!